importantly, benefit our country. So without further ado, I think we're going to get started. I'm going to hand over now to our MC, Tokes. Go ahead, Tokes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sworte Talks. Yes, we have quite an edition today, and it's about stuff politically. And we particularly have three excellent female speakers and male speaker. This is about you, the people. This is about highlighting the importance of knowing your political system and how to make an advantage of it to you, the citizens. You know, in the past, Sworte Talks have done things about politics. We've invited politicians, but you know, this is about you, the people. So before I move on to say also an important thing, PVC, make sure you guys have your PVCs, okay? So we're having this conversation, put it to use, PVCs, okay? So excellent. Before we continue, so we're going to start soon with our national anthem as we are patriots. So from there, I'm going to hand over to Libby. Who's going to start the national anthem? Okay. Let me review this shortly. Okay. Okay. National anthem. Okay. Maybe we can start with the opening prayer. Who's on? I can't hear anybody there. Sorry, connection. You can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. We'll go ahead with the opening prayer. Heavenly Father, King of Glory, we thank you for a time like this. We commit this program into your hands as we come together to celebrate the beauty of our country and to ensure that we're all involved in the decision-making concerning the future leader. Be with our nation, guide and protect it, propel it in the right direction. Amen.
Fantastic. Our national anthem. From there, sorry, Zamba, do you want to take and complete the opening prayer again, please? Sorry, we're interrupted.
Heavenly Father, King of Glory, we thank you again for a time like this. We thank you, Heavenly Father, because everyone on this platform is a patriot, is patriotic about their country. So we pray, Heavenly Father, as we learn more about our rights, that Father, Lord, you go before us and make the election peaceful, and you will propel our country to be that of a global nation, in Jesus' name. We pray for the upcoming elections, and we pray, Heavenly Father, that we will stand as a nation of order, integrity, and goodwill. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Yes. So from there, we would like to introduce to you all our members of Sworte Talks. You know, we've been on for several years now, and we have some individuals who have contributed greatly to what you guys see, to this quarterly event that we do. So you will see in a second, our members will come up on the screen.
There's no way. Okay, thank you very much for that, Victor. Once again, everybody, welcome to our 22nd edition of Sworte Talks. I'll turn on my video in just a minute, so please bear with me, but thank you again for being here. We do appreciate you. I know that we have about 43 people on. We are expecting a whole bunch more, but again, thank you for taking the time out to be with us today. As I mentioned earlier, Sworte Talks is an organization that was formed by everyday people who wanted to come together to make a difference in Nigeria by informing, influencing, and inspiring young people and old people alike through a variety of topics that we run every quarter. We used to have this physically, but obviously because of the pandemic, we've been doing this virtually, but look out for that. But I don't want to jump ahead of myself. I'm going to call on the founder of Sworte Talks, Dr. Femi Ogunsoya, to tell us a bit more about Sworte Talks in general and, of course, today's event. So please join me as I welcome Dr. Femi Ogunsoya.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, members of the Sworte Talks team, the Dream Team, the very dynamic people, and all that they do to keep Sworte Talks going. As was introduced as part of the introduction, Sworte Talks was founded about 7 years ago. This is our 22nd edition. Hooray! And there are people who have joined us practically for every edition. We pick topical issues to discuss. Usually what we have topics and we invite people who have experiences or who have stories to tell on such topics. Hence, stories worth telling is really what informed the name of the group. So this time round, though, we're not telling stories. We're talking about facts that affect each and every one of us. And I'm going to be borrowing a bit from some quotes and a copy of the book printed by one of us, because today we are talking about how much do you know and how much do you care. To play our roles, we need to pay attention, otherwise we'll be receiving what's thrown at us at the end of the day. And that quote that appeared on the screen was one by Martin Luther King, which said, I wish it hadn't disappeared, but I'll quote it again, which said that, yes, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And the important question today when we ask how much do you know and how much do you care is that whatever happens in our country, in one's own country, with regards to governance, concerns us. And therefore we cannot afford to be silent. We cannot afford to be ignorant. We cannot afford not to pay attention. And there's a book that's been published by one of us, one of the members of Sworte Talks team. It will not show on the screen, but it will come up later, called Footprints. And I borrow a few quotes from it. It says, if you stay out of politics, those who stay in politics will not stay out of your life, your health, your education, your home, your business, or your bank account. This is D.K. Chukwumereje's quote. So they are there, they affect everything that we do. If we say, oh, we're not interested, we're not paying attention, they are paying attention and they're affecting everything that we do. There's another one by Barack Obama quoted in the book that says, there's no such thing as a vote that doesn't matter. Every single vote matters. And I know that Tokes jokingly asked if we had our PVCs. If you have not collected your PVC, please ensure that you have your PVC, that you have a say in what's happening in your country with the politics. And I quote again from another section of the book that says, that makes a reference. Like many Nigerians, despite being an avid commentator, that's by one of the contributors to the book, I was completely disengaged from politics. Voting for the first time in 2011, and this is an adult we're talking about, when I understood that my disengagement from politics and elections had implications for governance, which had implications for the enjoyment of my rights and aspirations. I soon realized voting alone was not enough. I had to do more if I believed Nigeria would do better With the inclusion of women and youth, it's a woman. And if I wanted to see more people like me, educated, high standard, rule breakers, and dreamers in government. So what are we talking about here today? We are talking about how much do you know and how much do you care? We can't afford to say we do not care. We can't afford to run away when it's time. We need to be part of the determining process. We need to ensure that we get our voters' cards, and I think the age of voting is 18, and we have students on the platform as well who can start preparing if you're not 18 yet. We need to ensure that we actually cast our votes, and we wait at the polling station until the votes are counted and the results are released. We need to take ownership of our lives. We need to take ownership of what's going on in our environment, in our country. This is the only country as a Nigerian that we have. And we cannot forever submit ourselves to whims and caprices of whatever is thrown at us. I grew up in a Nigeria where there was structure, where there was accountability, where there was transparency. I witnessed Operation W.A.T. I witnessed Agbekoye of the farmers. So this is a country where people are resilient, where people have the fighting spirit. And a lot of us have just gone dormant, we've just gone quiet, it's like we've gone to sleep and we are not participating in what's happening in our environment. This is a clarion call. The opportunity of this conversation this afternoon is a clarion call for all of us to wake up to our responsibilities. We've seen it happen in other climes where people are partying and enjoying themselves and not paying attention to what's going on around them. And suddenly, policies or decisions are taken, elections result in somebody becoming president of the country, and people are asking, how did this happen? So it's time for us to wake up in Nigeria, to listen, to pay attention to all the conversations that's going to be happening this afternoon, to learn from them what really is the Electoral Act. Well, how do I get involved in my local council constituency? What do I know? Who do I know the people contesting? Who do I want to be my local council chairman? And we need to pay attention to all of these things. And we have 4 seasoned speakers this afternoon who are going to be talking to us in ordinary man's language, because I know we have lawyers amongst them, and they can speak the legal terminologies, but we've appealed that everything should be made as simple as possible so that we can understand and really have important, informed takeaways from this session this afternoon. So I'd like to start by saying a big thank you to all of our speakers who have responded to our invitation despite not really knowing who or what Sworte Talks is all about, but they'll be introduced later on. And thank you all very much indeed for joining us. If you still have family members, friends who haven't joined, please invite them. This is an important conversation that we need to participate in. We need to inform ourselves. We need to educate ourselves. We can't afford to sit on the fence anymore. I like the quote that says, don't sit on the fence. Now it's time to join the civil defense. It's time to take ownership of what's going on, of the governance of your country. So once again, I could carry on and on. I'm very passionate about this. But welcome again, everyone, to today's session. Please post your questions as we go along. Please keep your microphone muted and your cameras closed, and we'll have opportunities for conversations at the end of the presentations. Once again, welcome to the 22nd edition of Sworte Talks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogunsoya. And as she said, she's very passionate. Do we have Talks back on?
Yes, I'm back on. Yes, I'm here. Hello?
Please go ahead, Talks.
Hello? Hello? Yes, okay, thank you very much, Dr. for what you said. Yes, okay, so next we we're going to do some little spoken word before we continue with everyone care and the speakers. So yes, please, the person who's ready to speak the spoken word.
We have Nene Adams to do the spoken words. Nene Adams is ready.
Is she? Okay, please.
Okay, so while we wait for Nene to join us, can somebody just confirm if she's on the platform?
Yes, she is. I think she might need to unmute. Yes, she is. Yes, she is now.
Okay, please go ahead.
Nene, can you unmute? Yes, and do your presentation. Open your camera.
I'll just highlight this. Is Nene there?
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Nene.
Okay. Two sides. Since 1999, 23 years of democracy. Sofia kwa. Olomaje. Allah Soki. I laugh at this joke you call it democracy. Yes, I laugh bitterly. I scoff in utter disgust. The youth are the future of tomorrow. No! Rara mba. We should fix your mess. We should deal with the foolishness and incompetency of all these leaders. We should pay for their arrogance and greed. They say the youth are our only hope. Ha! Your hope don't japa go UK, US, Canada, Germany. All you have left are enraged, ravished, blind and desperate species, perfect for a country unwilling to change. Come and have a piece of this wretched land we call home. Better a foreigner with clear selfish agendas than betrayal by my own fathers and forefathers, mothers and sisters. The little children cry, I'm tired of hoping, crying on my knees for a lost cause. Why should I care anymore? And then hope rises. I would rather die than bow to defeat. We will take back this country. Every last blood shed by the selfishness of those power-hungry devils will be avenged. We will rise again. No, we are not ravished and desperate. We are the fire that will cleanse this nation of madness and usher a new era. My hope isn't in elections or the leaders, but yes, I will vote. It's in the hustlers, educators, students, true fathers and mothers. The sun will rise with hope in this nation again and set with joy and peace. China, India, America, former colonies, they all rose. The giant of Africa will live up to its name again.
Thank you, Nene. Thank you, Nene. Very powerful, powerful speech by powerful the poetry by young Nene. And before I hand over to Adoro, I'll go back to what Dr. Gonso said. You know, when you are trying to encourage people, your relatives, and just remember, not just your relatives, even the people that work with you, work in your house, your domestic staff, your security, all these people. Politics is a game of numbers. You know, they all need education in terms of how to use the system. You know, so it's not just about, you know, us that are here and, you know, the people who are more educated, people that come to Sworte talks and everything. That information that you're learning also decipher to your security, your domestic staff, or the people that work with you, people who work under you. It's a game of numbers. It's very important. So thank you, everybody. And now I'm going to hand over to Ms. Adoke. So it's all down to you, okay? Thank you, everybody. And our speakers will be on soon.
All right, good afternoon again, everyone, and thank you again for being here on our 22nd edition of Sworte Talks. As Tok said, my name is Adironke Adebanjo, and I will be moderating the panel. I think we've kind of touched on how important this conversation is, and we have just the right people today to pretty much distill everything that we're hoping to from this conversation. As you saw from the adverts, our topic today is 2023 elections, how much do you know? How much do you care? And the reason we went in this direction is because we've realized, even if we were being completely honest, even amongst ourselves, many people don't know as much as I would say they should about the electoral process, about how the government works, and more importantly, about the role that we play as citizens to move this country forward. So today, we're going to touch on all of that. And hopefully by the time we're done with our panel discussion and the questions that will be asked by you, the audience, we will all walk away from this conversation better equipped to walk into those polls come February 25th and cast our votes appropriately with enough knowledge required. So without further ado, I'm going to read the profiles of as quickly as I can, because I know that time is far spent, of our panelists, and then we'll go straight into it. So I'm going to start with the gentleman in our midst. We only have one. This is slightly different from what we're used to in terms of panels. He's outnumbered today, three women to one man. But we have Dele Farotimi. He's a retired legal practitioner and author of two thought-provoking and insightful books, one called Do Not Die in the War and the other Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution. He's a spokesperson for the Labour Party presidential 2023 campaign, Southwest region, and he is passionate about the birth of a new and better Nigeria. We also have Boma Alabi. Boma Alabi, OONSAN, is a senior partner of Primera Africa Legal, PAL. She's PAL's corporate governance and compliance. She leads, PAL's corporate governance and compliance practice. In addition to being an experienced arbitrator and accredited civil and commercial mediator, Boma specializes in international tax law, maritime law, mergers and acquisitions, and capital market transactions. She has advised on some of Nigeria's leading commercial deals in a number of sectors, including real estate and infrastructure, manufacturing, banking, hospitality, telecommunications, maritime, energy, project funding, and development. She serves as the president of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association. She served from 2011 to 2013, the first and only woman president in the over 50 years history of this association of lawyers from 54 countries across 7 continents. She was a council member of the board of the Royal Commonwealth Society and also served as a chairwoman of the Association of Women's Solicitors of England and Wales between 2005 and 2006. She's a member of the Institute of Directors and ICC. She serves on the board of Alpha International and as chairman of the board for Just Commercial Vehicles Limited and the Shippers Association of Nigeria. In addition, Boma serves as an INED on, I hope I said that correctly, on the board of ARM Harith and Kari Assets Management. She's also on the advisory board of Whisker, a non-for-profit structured mentoring organization. So let me ask us to please give a round of applause for the 2 speakers I've already introduced, Dele Farotimi and Boma Alabi. Wherever you are, even though we can't see each other, you can just clap. As I've read their profiles, you can see the caliber of people that we have on board today. We also have Kadaria Ahmed. She's a seasoned professional media executive and consultant to NOG's public and private sector boards. She is a strategic communications consultant with a global network of contacts in the media industry, which she's built over a 30-year cross-platform career, working in print, radio, television, online, and social media platforms. She's done extensive work, and she has extensive work experience leveraging a successful business at the BBC as a journalist and producer to lead high-profile assignments and produce world-class content for public programs. She's the recipient of grants in support of work in accountability journalism from leading donor agencies, including the Ford Foundation, OSIWA, and the MacArthur Foundation, among others. She is an articulate panel moderator, TV host, and opinion contributor. She's an accomplished editor, and she's an influential member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors and also Chevening Scholar. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kadaria Ahmed. And last but certainly not least, and it's so important that we read profiles so that you know who's speaking to us today. She's a member of Sworte Talk, so she's one of our own, and it's Yemi Adamaleku. She's an active citizen and connector. She serves as the executive director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, a nonpartisan network of individuals and organizations committed to building a culture of good governance and public accountability in Nigeria through active citizenship. EIE, Enough is Enough, has led various advocacy campaigns, including its flagship RSVP Register, Select, Vote, Protect campaign, which is Nigeria's longest running get out of the vote campaign. To mark its 5th anniversary in 2015, it started the Office of the Citizen Campaign, which is focused on teaching citizens their rights and responsibilities as they occupy the highest office in the land. Let me repeat that. We as citizens occupy the highest office in the land. That's one of the messages that we want everybody to leave with today, but we'll distill that a little bit more and explain that a little bit more. And in May 2020, she won the Global Citizen Prize in recognition of her contribution to the civic space over the past 12 years. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get right into our conversation today. And we will be taking questions at the end, so please pay close attention. And if you have any questions for our distinguished panel, who you don't always get to see, but you have them at your fingertips today, please be sure to use the Q&A box that you'll see on your screen. Please note that we're also streaming on Facebook. So let your friends know to join us there if they rather join a different platform, but please share the link to this platform because this is a very important discussion. So without further ado, 2023 elections, how much do you know? How much do you care? And to kick off the conversation, I'm going to call, by the way, we're on first name basis for the panel, just for the purpose of this panel. I'm going to call on Dele Farotimi to talk us through the Electoral Act and what we need to know about the Electoral Act, just to kick off the conversation. So Dele, over to you.
Well, I believe it's proper to say good afternoon. I think I have a panel of ladies that, oh, of course, we don't have ladies at the back. There's a Leonard Silk. Good afternoon, madam. My sister Ayemi, my regards, and of course, my respect to each and every one of those who are with us today. I don't know how you have managed to put this together, that you decided that the Leonard Silk, who is still practicing law, who is in every way my senior at the bar, even if I was still pretending to practice law, should be in the house. And then it is me, the retired lawyer, that you're asking to come and speak to the Electoral Act. But then, because of the importance of the subject and the importance of the act itself, I have been compelled to take time to look through it. Since what I'm being asked to do is essentially the work of a law lecturer, I would pretend to be one, even though I would freely confess my ignorance now, given the fact that I am retired. So all caveats haven't been entered. Let me speak to the Electoral Act 2022. Some people have done some work before me, and they've narrowed down the scope of work that you've left for me, especially given the amount of time that I do have. One of the major features of the new Electoral Act is the financial independence of the National Electoral Commission. That was not the case under the 2010 Electoral Act. Under the old Act, the INEC was dependent on the Ministry of Finance largely to perform its functions. It had to wait until the Minister of Finance or the executive more or less might have determined exactly what it would get. But under the new Act, it now has electoral autonomy, and it has financial autonomy, and it may raise funds for the conduct of election as opposed to when it used to wait. What has also happened, and this one has had a direct impact on the current electoral cycle, is that there is an extension of the time frame within which the electoral guideline and notice, the election notice guide, the electoral notice now, the publication of the notice, unlike before when it used to be, I believe it used to be just 90 days, is now 360 days under the new Electoral Act. What has happened therefore is that unlike the old system where you find that candidates emerge pretty close to the actual election day, and we didn't really have as much time as we have now to scrutinize the candidates themselves, to ask questions, interrogate them. What you are seeing now where candidates, a particular candidate actually is weaving and bobbing and dodging all attempts at having rational debate. It wouldn't have been so obvious if all we had between the emergence of candidates and the actual election were the old 90 days. This time around, we had so much time, like 6 months. So we've had time to look at the quality of candidate. And of course, this has also meant that the party primaries were conducted earlier than used to be the case. What this has also meant is that there is enough time for candidates to engage with the electorate and for the electorate to engage with the candidates and to ask critical questions that used to be glossed over in time gone by when there wasn't enough time. The electoral cycle used to be as short as 120 days in times gone by. But now, because of the new Electoral Act, the extension of the time, I believe it has deepened, or at least it has given the opportunity for us to deepen our democracy, ask questions of those who are asking to rule us. Now, under the new Electoral Act as well, unlike before, when it used to be that overvoting is defined in terms of the number of voters not being more than the number of registered voters in the election. Now it is the number of accredited voters, which leads me somewhat to the Osun imbroglio, because anyway, I guess with the learned silk in the house, I'll leave those who are still practicing law to explain that, but it will definitely become an issue in the coming days. But the issue of overvoting has been redefined in the new act. And part of that is what we have seen playing out in Osun, even though in my own opinion, and I must again say, I am not a lawyer again, I don't practice. My opinion is that in Osun, the law has deliberately misapplied itself, but that's another story for another day. Now, under the Electoral Act, what happened in Osun could have been avoided by the exercise of the powers of review that had been granted to the presiding officer at the electoral point. But this was also not done, and this was part of what has led to the argument about the number of accredited voters, the numbers that was transmitted by beavers, and the entire argument about overvoting has been as a function of that. Under the new Electoral Act as well, you have an attempt to correct what happened in Kogi I think that was in 2015, 2016, when Abubakar died. Under the new act, if a candidate dies while the election has been concluded, the deputy would proceed to become the governor, unlike what had happened with the Abubakar issue in Kogi. So this has also clarified that. And then we have a lot of technological advances that have been made under the act. The entire process has been made electronic. It's gone as far as to say that if for some reason you cannot use the electronic system, you then have an obligation to shift the election and then conduct it under the auspices of the electronic system as already set out in the act. So the new act provides for electronic transmission of results, and it also makes sure that the whole system where you used to go all the way to the collation centers and then abracadabra would happen at the local government level, at least that has been legislated against. Now, we can write all the laws in the world, but if the practitioners are bent on circumvention, and if the citizens, quote and unquote, because the Nigerian, in my own opinion, is not a citizen, but if those who have been granted a vote, whether in a game of charade or in reality, if those who have been granted a vote decide to use their vote and they do elect to use it as given, then there is an opportunity to use that system. And it is better than most, probably better than what the Americans have in terms of their written laws. But our own willingness to abide by the rules and to do the right thing probably matters more than anything that might have been written in the act itself. So I think so far as the law goes, I think we've written a pretty good law. The voting guideline under the new act also makes it pretty, I think we have what you call a reformed, modified, open ballot system. So the person has the privacy of his voting, of the voting cubicle, but he brings the ballot out into the open, already folded, to drop in the ballot box in open view of all. So he cannot use his phone whilst within the voting precinct. So there is complete secrecy to the voting process. That, taken along with other provisions, if faithfully implemented, and if we, as the highest office holders in this country, do our job, then we have a system that should work. Those are my views. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dele Farotimi. Just a quick question before we wrap up your part of the discussion. So as the elections take place, what would you say everyone logged on as a citizen needs to be aware of as in summary, right, on that day, and even just as we move forward from the elections? What would you say a 3-point takeaway based on the Electoral Act we all need to be aware of as we walk into the elections and even just right after?
Well, I think one of the first things that we all need to have at the back of our mind is that elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. Whoever you vote in the coming election determines what happens with the 77 trillion that has been piled on in debt. It determines whether you continue to bear the brunt of subsidizing governmental incompetence, impunity, corruption, madness. It determines whether we take a turn away from the brink of the abyss, where we've been doing dancing buga, in the word of judges who should not be using those kind of terminologies. But put it this way, each and every one of us would have to take responsibility for what we do within the cathedral precinct of the voting cubicle on that day. So it is critical that our people understand this is not just about, casting a ballot. It's about the entire direction of the future. That 77 trillion is not an abstraction, it's a reality. It is the persons we elect now who get to determine whether the rulers continue to live in the style to which they have grown accustomed, whilst the people who are meant to be citizens continue to be as slaves. These ones will determine it. So this election, probably more than any other in the history of Nigeria, have serious consequences. And this is actually the key thing that each Nigerian need to keep in mind when they walk into the voting precinct.
Thank you very much, Dele Farotimi. We're going to move the conversation now in the direction of the local government. This is a very important conversation, and Dele Farotimi has just kind of set the tone. He's told us what the Electoral Act is and what we need to keep in mind when we go into the elections. But as far as what happens after the elections, governance, and what happens in terms of our role as the highest officer in the land, we want to talk about the local government and the role that it plays in our daily lives, but not just that, what we can do to be part of that process of governance. And to help us kind of distill all of that, we're going to move to Boma Alabi, SAN. She's going to take us through what the significance of the local government is. We hear this all the time, but if I did a poll real quick, how many of us know where our local government office is, who the local government chairman, council, whatever the different roles are in the local, many of us don't know. And that's part of why we want to talk about this today. So I'm going to call on Boma Alabi to just start us off with what is the significance of the local government?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that kind of introduction as well. And my learned colleague, Dele, you are more than well equipped to speak on the topic that you have. And as you can see, you've done it great justice. I am very happy to be talking about local government, because as a matter of fact, that is the most important tier of government from the citizen's perspective. And I'm going to say to us, actually, this is not just about after the election, this is before the election. Your local government councillors are as important, if not more important, as your presidential candidate. So you need to find out now who's running for your local government, what is their manifesto for you, and what do they intend to do when they get in there? Why is that important? Because it is the tier of government that touches the life of the citizen the most. I don't think most of us are aware that either exclusively or concurrently with the state government, the local government is in charge of our schools, our hospitals, our clinics, the local roads we ply when we go from our homes to our workspace, go shopping, sanitation, local taxes and security. What else impacts on your life as a citizen more than all of these headings that I have just enumerated? You have most of us, including those who are literally barely able to feed themselves, are having to pay for private school fees for their children, purely because they want their children to have some modicum of a good education. Why should that be? That's because the funds that should be allocated to our local schools are not getting to where they ought to go. And nobody's holding them accountable, nobody's asking any questions. Now, I know most of us will throw up our hands and say, well, how can we hold them accountable? We are, mere citizens. You are not mere citizens. You are, as they earlier said, the most important person in the democratic process. All of these elected political office holders are accountable to you, the citizen. So know your place. Now, what tool is available for you, the citizen, to hold these people accountable? That tool took us 13 years of activism, of pressure, pushing almost to the last minute for it to be passed, and then off it goes again, and a new round starts with a new parliament. It is called the Freedom of Information Act. And when it was in process, of course, the politicians realized how important that tool was, and they didn't want that tool in the hand of the citizen. They wanted to keep fobbing us off with the Official Secrets Act and all of this business. The turkeys won't vote for Christmas, but we managed to get it in place. Unfortunately, and much to my disappointment, and I'm hoping today, and as the information goes out, more and more of us will know about it, it somehow was portrayed as some sort of a media act for the media to ask questions. It is not a media act, it is a citizens act. And it's meant for every one of us to hold those we've elected, those in government, accountable to us for our money. Because when they refer to public funds, we are the public, it's our money. So we need to be asking them, how much are you putting into my local school? Right? You know what school is nearest to you. How much are you putting into my local hospital? When are you going to fix my street? Those are the questions pre-election. And then after election, you hold them accountable. When the budget comes through, and we know what happens, the state government does not then allow it to trickle down to the local government in a lot of cases. If that's the case, and if you're asking those questions, they have no choice but to respond and tell you the actual amount they received. Where did the rest of it go? And when we begin to ask those questions, if they choose not to respond, they have no choice, like I said, because the Act says they have to respond within 30 days. And if they do not respond within 30 days, then you have a right to go to court to compel them. And yes, most people think, well, the whole business is a bit too expensive. Well, since the Freedom of Information Act was passed, I and my colleagues in my firm have offered countless times to take any local government council, any government officer, or any institution that refuses to respond to a Freedom of Information inquiry. And by the way, you don't have to even put it in writing. It can be by a telephone call or WhatsApp message. It doesn't have to be a formal letter. If they refuse to respond within 30 days, we will take them to court on your behalf, and we will ensure that they're compelled to respond. To my great disappointment, not one person has taken that offer up, at no cost to you, by the way, which is what we call pro bono. So it says something about how much do you care? Now you know, how much do you care? Do you care enough to ensure that you ask those questions going forward with every budget, and you hold them accountable, and you make sure they respond to you? Do you care enough? Because if you don't care, nobody else is going to look after your business. That's the truth. In terms of the laws, we have sufficient in place. This Freedom of Information Act, like I said, gives you the power to hold your elected officials in your local government accountable. Local government is the most important tier of government from your citizens' perspective. Because like I said before, your schools, your hospitals, your clinics, your local roads, sanitation, local taxes, security are all either exclusively under the watch or concurrently with the state government. So let's try and understand just how important local government is and begin to pay attention to what they're doing and how they're doing it. And you'll find that once we begin to do that, we would feel the effect of our democracy and government. Look at what happens in the United Kingdom. I think most people are not aware that the word lobbying comes from the lobby of the House of Commons. The citizens' engagement with their members of parliament, their representatives. So they go to the lobby and they instruct their representatives as to their views and what they want, and they in turn take the view of the majority of their constituency and proceed to advocate that. That's where that word came from. So our democracy will not embed without the citizen coming to the table. And that is why I commend Sworte for what they're doing. And I commend all of us who are participating in this panel. I also commend those who are participating as in the audience in giving up their Sunday afternoon to be part of this. This is what we must do. That's how much we care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have to ask a very quick follow-up question, Bomalabi, because there's this idea that there's a number of people that are afraid to get involved in politics, or even as a citizen, getting involved in terms of going to the local government and asking questions. Let's put it out there. People don't want to feel like they're going to be targeted, or, they could get in trouble. So when you say that we can ask these questions and make these demands on these office holders, what does that look like in reality? Where can I go as an individual? Maybe there's a road near my house that needs to be fixed, or I noticed that, how do I even find out what the budget is for my local government? Where do I go? Do they have meetings? Can I join the meetings? Can I literally just walk into the meeting and be part of it? If so, where do I go? How do I get a bit more information? If you can just touch on that a little bit.
Okay, well, from that perspective, and everyone here is somewhat computer literate, otherwise they would not be on this Zoom call. So I would say Google is your friend. Whichever part of the country you're in, most of the state governments have their website. And on that website, you find the different levels of government, generally speaking. So local government, for instance, I live and work in a Tiosa local government. I don't need to go physically to the local government HQ in order to ask this question. I can find out who is who and what they're doing from their website, and then send written requests for information. If I'm worried about my safety or being targeted, then you can do that at arm's length. It's probably even better because that will then be directed to the appropriate department, because a lot of times when you go physically, and I have been, it's a bit chaotic. Having said that, you'll be surprised at quite how civil they are, because when you do go in there in person, they will direct you to the right department and try and respond within their knowledge to your inquiry. And that in turn will lead you to at least the appropriate information to target your your questions better.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that information, Boma Alabi. Very, very helpful and useful information. And just to reiterate what she said, based on the Freedom of Information Act, we can ask questions at arm's length, as she said, if we're afraid, or we can walk in there and demand answers because, again, we hold the highest office in the land as citizens. All right, we're going to move very quickly to our next speaker on the panel. And then, as I said, we do have a Q&A session coming up. So if you do have any questions on anything we've talked about, maybe we haven't touched on something that you'd like us to address, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A chat box. And once we get to Q&A, we will take your questions. I'm going to call on our next speaker, Kadaria Ahmed, to just talk us through the difference between the executive and the legislative in terms of how governance works and how that impacts us as citizens and what we need to know as we go into the elections as it concerns the executive versus the legislative, pardon me.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Is my audio good?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Hi. So first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for putting this together. I think we're not belaboring the point when we basically say that information is at the core of functional democracies, and the ability of citizens to understand the system and sort of have informed participation is often the difference between democracies that work and that don't work. And that's why the work of advocacy of the sort that Sworte is now doing, the work of media, civil society is so critical to a functioning democracy. I just want to share a quick thing before I dive straight into, and I know I have 7 minutes, I'll try and do my best to work within it, but Nigeria, the ranking for good governance has just been released, and Nigeria is basically the third from the bottom. This ranking, basically called the Chandler Good Government Index, measures things like leadership, foresight, laws, policies, strong institutions, the way we sort of manage our finances, in other words, accountability, stewardship, the marketplace, the global influence, and our reputation. And at the moment, the only, I think, 2 other countries that we are ahead of are, I think, Venezuela and I'm not sure, I think it's Zimbabwe. And that, I think, tells you all you need to know about the sort of people that have been in charge of our government. Now, I will talk sort of through the technicalities of what the Constitution says, and then I'll talk about whether it works or not. And I think it doesn't work, and I'll explain why I think it doesn't work and what we can do. So essentially, the executive and the legislative arm of government are part of the trinity of governance in Nigeria, the third, of course, being the judiciary. And this is sort of as arranged in the Nigerian constitution. In other words, the executive in layman terms is and I'm not a lawyer, so this is just my understanding. And if I get anything factually wrong, I'm happy for the lawyers to correct me. But my layman understanding is that the executive basically are the administrators, and they administer this country using a cabinet, which is sort of the instrument through ministries, etc., etc. The National Assembly, on the other hand, who are the legislators, make laws for this country, but they also have an accountability job, which is basically they make laws, but they're also supposed to have an oversight function over the executive arm. And that oversight function is supposed to enable them hold the executive accountable, not to allow for abuse of office, ensure that there are efficiencies, ensure that basically they are supposed to be the representative of the people. In other words, in an ideal environment, if you have a National Assembly that is functioning, they go there and their only interest is the interest of the regular people who elected them and sent them there to be their eyes, their ears, and their mouth, right? So the way it is at the moment, the Senate, for example, and there are some people who believe that our National Assembly is too expensive and needs to be done away with. In the Senate, you have 3 senators from all the 36 states, right, of the Federation. In that way, the House of Reps is slightly more representative because It sends people to the center based on constituencies. What that means is that minorities are more likely to be represented in the House of Reps than you would have in the Senate, right? So there are those who have argued that no, maybe we should get rid of House of Reps. There are others who say, well, the House of Reps, which is sort of 360 people, tend to be more representative because it's not a sort of blank number that, okay, each state has 10 people, 20 people. No, it's divided based on constituencies. So they go there to represent constituencies. Of course, in practice, we have found that the representation, none of these people actually go into government seeking to represent the people who send them there. In actual fact, majority of the times, we hear they collude with the executive, they pass rules, they pass policies, they pass laws, they pass laws that are not sort of friendly or refuse to pass laws that are friendly. A typical example, since we just finished talking about local government, it wasn't happening in the last few days. So there's a bill that is seeking to give financial autonomy to local governments. And as we heard, local government is important because at that point is where education, health, and a whole bunch of really important things that are very close to individuals are determined. And yet local governments don't have autonomy. So the state is a sort of mini, it works in a similar way to sort of the federal government in that you have state executives and you also have state houses of assembly who are supposed to hold the states accountable. In most states, the state houses of assembly are rubber stamps for governors who kind of determine who gets a ticket to sort of contest and win. And so an attempt is being made to give local government autonomy because at the moment their money goes to the state and the state government determines what they get. That autonomy is important if they're to be able to sort of carry out all the functions that they're supposed to carry. The bill for that has just been defeated in the National Assembly. The governors didn't like it and they lobbied the National Assembly hard, and National Assembly people have sort of dialed it down. So essentially, I am a great believer that actually if we could get our legislative arm of government to function, both at the federal and at the state level, we may be able to dilute the power of the center. And I don't think we pay enough attention to electing our representatives. Now, part of the problem, of course, which affects those elections, but also the bigger elections at the national level, is the utter lack of internal party democracy within the parties themselves. So there's a lot of patronage. The people who sort of get seats to go and contest in elections are people who manage to, be on the right side of godfathers, et cetera, et cetera. So in summary, I guess what I really want to say is that central government matters, but I think National Assembly and state assemblies, if we can get them right, and I think it might be easier to get them right than to get the center right in one go. So I'm not suggesting people shouldn't be involved in national elections, no. But I'm saying that if we could pay as much attention to National Assembly elections, local government elections, state assembly elections, as we did to presidential and governorship polls, if we could get credible people to go to Abuja, to go to our state capitals and be real representatives of people, I think we could hold the executive accountable in a way that means that we can make a difference. And I believe those elections are easier to win because they are limited in terms of scope. The numbers are easier to manage. You can almost do house-to-house campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. In a nutshell, we should pay as much attention to those who become our senators and our House of Rep members as much as we do to who becomes president. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that quick course in the executive and legislative from Kadaria Ahmed. I'm sure we took a few notes and we were able to take something away from that conversation. And it's a long conversation. We can go on and on about that, but there's just not that much time, and we do want to get to a Q&A. So I'm going to move to our final speaker for this evening. She is one of our own, and when I say that, I mean she's part of the Sworte Talks team. She's also going to touch on the local government and how we can get involved and how it impacts our daily lives, because she's been very active in terms of the work that she's been doing, as we mentioned in her introduction. So I'm going to hand over now to Yemi Adamolekun to just talk us through, just to buttress Boma Alabi's points from earlier on, just talk us through how we can get more involved as citizens in the local government space. As we've said, that's probably the most important arm of government or governance, because that's where some of the decisions, if not all the decisions that impact our daily lives directly, take place and happen. So again, just to reiterate some of the points that were earlier said, can you just take us through what we can all do to get more involved to impact our daily lives more positively?
Thank you, Adironke. I don't have, okay, great, it's not working. Sorry, excuse the background. I'll start off and thank you, Sworte Talks family, for having me, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I will start off actually with where Kadaria left off, just to re-echo her point that the legislature is extremely important. I mean, for a group of people that make the policies, the laws really that affect our lives, it's good to pay attention. As you said, it's a much smaller election than a governor or a president, so we can engage a lot. We find that at the State House of Assembly level, which are the legislators in the state, most people don't know who represents them. And at the federal level, you might know your senator or your House of Rep member, but again, we don't pay as much attention to who's running for governor or who's running for president. And that's also the same thing with local government chairman. Mr. Labi has spoken quite a bit about the role and how important that office is, but we're going into a general election. It's not a local government election, so you're not electing anybody at that level, but really just to echo that it is a critical election that we don't pay attention to. So at this time, because the president is involved, 28 states are choosing their governors as well. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of campaigning, because state campaigns for presidential campaigns, senators leverage on their governor or their House of Rep member. So there is a lot of noise. But when it comes to local government elections, we've had people win with 1,500 votes, 800 votes, just really like dismal numbers because we don't pay attention. So while this election that we're talking about primarily in February is presidential, it is critical to realize that from the gutter in front of your house to street signs, to street lights, to the local markets, to the cemetery, to nursery and primary, nursery and primary education, all of that are actually local government functions. But I mean, not to put anybody on the spot, I'm surprised if anybody on the call actually knows the name of their local government chairman. And I mean, so just not to repeat, a good way to find out who represents you is a platform that EIE built many years ago. It's called shineyoureye.org. So the slang, shine your eye. So shineyoureye.org. And what we've tried to do over 8 odd years is build a database of everybody that represents everybody. So if you go on the website and put in your location, say Etiosa, like this Boma, Lagos, it will tell you who your governor is, who your senator is, who your House of Rep member is, who your state House of Assembly member is, and who your local government chairman is. We've had varied successes of getting data. The idea is to provide information. So for those that we know, we're giving you their phone number, their email address. If they have a constituency office, we're providing that address as well. So as Mr. Labi said, you can show up. Thank you, Adironke, exactly. You can show up and go and see them. Now, we're saying all of this as a roundup, not to say that it's easy, because our government officials are not used, the concept of service is not in their lingua franca. They are there to lead and be powerful. They're not there to serve. So when you show up, even though I'm glad Salabi said they were civil, my experience in my local government, actually they were civil. They were just confused because they didn't understand why I was there. So I live in Ikeja, went to Ikeja local government many years ago, and they didn't know what to do with me. Are you a lawyer? No. Are you a journalist? No. Are you a party member? No. So who are you? Well, I live in this area and I just want to see the chairman. They couldn't process what that meant. Like they didn't understand it. They didn't understand what they were supposed to do with me. I'm not a party member, not a journalist. I just want to see my local government chairman. So expect a bit. I mean, I'm sure a bit of that has improved, but depending on where you are calling from, it might not have. So expect a bit of confusion because you just don't engage in that manner. But it's a mutual process. They don't know their job. we don't know our jobs. So we need to mutually teach ourselves so they can serve us better. Thank you, Adirunke.
Thank you very much, Yemi, for that summary. And please, everyone, be sure to visit www.shineyoureye.org. Now you have no excuse and to find out that information. So www.shineyoureye.org, we've put it in the chat. And as Yemi said, you can find phone numbers. And then as Boma Alabi said, you can pick up the phone and actually call them and make demands. And if they don't do what they're supposed to do by virtue of the Freedom of Information Act, you can take action even pro bono and not have to pay a lawyer to be able to take action. But these are some of the steps that we need to take as citizens to see the results that we desire. We have an active role to play. You know, the government has its part, but we also have our part to play. And it's time for us to really get up and play our part. So we're going to move to the Q&A very, very quickly. Dr. Gutoya says she just tried the website and it gives all the information that she needs about her local council. So it works. So please check it out. Send it, link to your friends. You know, we've been talking a lot about getting your PVC, which is great, but these types of resources are very important as well. So we're going to take some questions now. Again, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the Q&A box. I'm just going to read out this first one. Says, it's from Bayo Adaramola. It says, I don't know what FOIA means, but maybe one of our panelists does. It says, I hear the FOIA speaks to being able, Freedom of Information Act. I just figured that out. Okay. I hear the Freedom of Information Act speaks to being able to hold elected officials accountable. I'm interested to know, however, to what extent the act applies to government organs, parastatals, and ministries, as interactions within these spaces call for lots of questions. So I'm going to throw that question hand that question over to Boma Alabi to please answer.
Thank you very much. The Act actually makes every institution that deals with our money, I don't like saying public funds because I want us to own it, accountable. So if that means that all of those institutions you're asking about are caught up under the Freedom of Information Act, and you're entitled to information from them as to what they're doing with public funds. It's really that simple. So long as they have access to taxpayers' money, or they are somehow being funded by taxpayers' money, and that includes oil revenue and so on, then they are accountable to us under the Act. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just trying to
Can I add to that really quickly?
Pardon?
Can I add to that really quickly?
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
Sorry, pause a minute. Just to say that what we also find very interesting. Oh, thank you. I wanted to say that to Ms. Alabi. Thank you very much for that, your offer. Please, if anybody does have a case, please take up on it, especially because she's a senior advocate of Nigeria. So just by kind of our legal practice, her cases will get priority. We actually have done, I think EIA in Nigeria probably has gone to court maybe 20 times, if not, on the FOI Act, if not more. And one of the things that was actually very useful, which is a landmark case that we won last year, was that I think it was the appeal court said that it's not just applied to government agencies. It also sort of affirmed that a private company that does business with a government agency is also subject to the Act. So you can also request for information from a private company. So the context of this lawsuit was Coscaris, BMW, that what's the English word? The dealers for BMW. So this was, I forget what year this was, when Stella Odua was Minister of Aviation, and they bought a bunch of BMWs. That was an issue with First Bank and Coscaris. And so we actually did a Freedom of Information request to Coscaris and First Bank, and neither one of them responded, and we took them to court. And we got a judgment last year, I believe at the appeal court, that affirms that it doesn't matter that it was a government agency that actually bought the car, but because they bought the car from you, Coscaris, or Coscharis, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Because they bought the car from you, BMW dealer, using a loan or facility from First Bank, both of you as entities are also subject to the Freedom of Information Act. And it's really quite fantastic. So not any any government agency that has a private business partner, the private business is also subject to that same law. So just wanted to add that.
Very interesting. Thank you for that information as well, Yemi. We have another question here that says, from Fumi Ajayi Tomori says, appreciate all that's been said. The nature of our political organ is warped. Don't you think holding town hall meetings in as many local governments as possible will shine light effectively? I'll throw that to Kadaria.
I'm happy to take that on.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm a big believer in town halls, and I think the person who asked the question is actually spot on. Last year, we did a series that put, this was National Assembly members though, face to face with their constituencies across Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones. And in some cases, we actually, unfortunately, we couldn't do them state by state. So we had to do 6 across the geopolitical zones. And we brought basically senators, House of Rep members, face to face with sort of people, because we asked people to just show up and apply. And we even put transport on for people to sort of come from other states. And it was hugely, hugely successful. I'm still getting sort of messages and people saying we'd never seen our legislators before and force them to ask questions. Normally we see them during the elections, and then after that they change their phone numbers or they don't even answer our calls. So I think town halls are significant, but I think, you see, more than that, I think is growing a culture where post-elections, they can't ignore the constituency. And I think that only comes from the constituency understanding the power that they hold. I'm talking about, you know, the way the word lobbyist, where it comes from. This idea of sort of just walking into your local government, asking questions, showing up in your parliament, asking questions. I think we need to encourage that and empower people to have the confidence and if you like, ballsiness to be able to sort of go and confront people that are in charge, because whether we like it or not, and I say this, and it's not a very popular view, we are part of the problem. There's a way in which we celebrate thieves, we celebrate people who sort of basically let this country down in very fundamental ways. There's a way in which the worst among us that have taken charge and have put this country on its knees continue to be those who lead us, even within our communities. Outside political power, we are eager to go to their parties. We're eager to associate with them. We're eager to get validation from them. And I think that's a mindset thing and a culture thing. And we have to sort of start telling ourselves that part of what you need to do is, there was a time when ostracizing people was a very good tool for sort of ensuring that people behaved themselves. I know it sounds like when you're old and you look back in nostalgia, but I certainly grew up in a country where if your parents didn't know what the job of another parent was, they wouldn't let you go to the house to play, you know? So this thing of being a businessman, you know, all those titles that people now use when they're basically doing nothing but are sort of middlemen or rent seekers. Those things, you know, there was a way in which society moderated those things in the past, and that has all collapsed now. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Kadaria, for that. Just to follow up on that. So, who would you advise should hold these town halls? You know, who should be the person running these town halls?
I honestly think everybody who can should. So, civil society, working with local media. So, for example, if you look at these elections and the amount of resources that are being put on TV, for example, to sort of talk to people about elections. TV is good, it's great, and video is very visual and it flies on social media. But there's a large chunk of Nigerians who rely on information, who rely on radio for information, because, you know, we have data poverty. So sometimes we sit in cities like Lagos and we sort of delude ourselves into believing that, oh, everybody is on social media, everybody is on. In fact, the biggest perhaps social media tool in this country is WhatsApp, right? So, you know, people personally sharing things. It's not necessarily Twitter, it's not necessarily Facebook. Important as they are, I'm not dismissing them. There's a certain demography that you can target, but I'm also saying there's a demography for whom radio still remains the primary means of, conversation. In a place like Lagos, shockingly, 7 out of every 9 Lagosians actually listens to radio at some point during their week, whether it is when sitting in traffic, whether it is, so, and I don't think we necessarily are paying attention as media, as civil society, as advocates to sort of other mediums, much in the same way. There are mediums that are sexy, if you like. So talking about digital media, because of the world we live in, digital media is sexy, television is sexy, because, advocates become almost mini stars themselves by their appearances on TV. They become some, people are recognize them and enjoy them. But the truth is that if they focus only on that, the problem is that there's a whole bulk of people that they are missing. And I'd like to see a little bit more engagement. So anybody that can do town halls from sort of even little community organizations, why not? If you live in a local government and you run a small NGO, why can't you do a town hall and you invite your local government chairman to come and answer questions?
Thank you very much. Lots of information there. Thank you so much. We have another question. Keep your questions coming. I think we have about 5 more minutes for our Q&A. A question about recalling politicians. So the question says, how do you recall local politicians? Essentially, if they're not performing, how do you get them out of office? I'm going to throw this question to Dele Farotimi to shed some light on that, if he will. Still on? Okay, I think he had to leave early, so I'm going to throw it to Boma Alabi. If you can please just shed light on, if they're not performing, how do we get them out of office? It's kind of like when you're not doing your job, you lose your job. So how do we get that done?
So this is also why it's important that we join political parties, because the process has to go through a party structure. When I was a young student in England, I knew, and I understand why many of us do not join political parties at the moment, because they all stand for the same thing, more or less, same old. But it was clear, there was a clear divide between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and one was more aligned to my views. And I joined the Conservatives. Margaret Thatcher was my MP, and I was an active young Conservative. So if you want to you really be a part of the entire process, you need to be part of that party. And that is where, because the individuals who go forward to the House of National Assembly or the State House of Reps are party representatives. Although the represented constituency, they are first a party representative and elected on that platform. And it is through that platform that you can recall them. So aside from urging us to use the Freedom of Information Act, I think perhaps this question has brought us to a point where we're also saying to us, be a card-carrying member of one of the parties, whichever one that is most aligned to your personal views. And if it's not that aligned, jump in and make it more so. I use the analogy, what we do here is like we sit around watching football, and the audience is so much greater than the few participants who are running around kicking the leather ball and running our lives. If we all jumped into that football pitch, they would have very little power because we would be the majority. But yeah, so join the parties, and that's the process. The process goes through the party platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we have any other questions as we wrap it up. This question from Chica says,
sorry, before you go ahead, okay? Can I jump in again? Sorry.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, sorry. Two things I wanted to talk. Oh yeah, Kadaria's point about town hall meetings, very critical. And also, I think even politicians themselves. I think it was one of the things Remi Tinubu did very well in Lagos as senator, was she hosted a town hall meeting. She promised to host a town hall meeting every quarter. And she did, I think, for her first term. But unfortunately, what then happened was that because people didn't show up, it became a party meeting. So only APC party members would be there. One, it's during the day, so you'd have to take time off. And she was very good at it because she actually rotated it within the senatorial district. So because citizens didn't show up, it was a party affair. And I remember the one that I went to, because I actually challenged her, people assumed I was PDP. So that's also the dynamic of that, because there weren't a lot of people in the audience that were asking questions. People her party members got offended because I was asking questions. So for politicians that do take on their role seriously and organize these town hall meetings, citizens should show up, go there, ask questions, engage them. And then secondly, Ms. Boma is spot on with the executive, because unless you are part of the party, it's the party that decides who represents. However, recall works for legislators. So you can actually recall your senator and you can recall your House of Rep member. But the criteria to do that is quite steep. You have to get, I think, 2/3 of the registered voters in your constituency to sign a petition. Look at Ronga's face. Ronga is like, huh? Yeah. So it's designed to be very difficult. That's the truth. But the law is there. The only time it's never been successfully used, the only time that it was almost successful, it was very political. People were paid to sign the petition. And so when I think there's a next step where citizens you have to verify the signatures. So when it came time to verify the signatures on the petition, nobody came forward and it died a natural death. So the law is there, but it is a difficult bar to pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yemi. And you raise a very interesting point. How do we then leverage how do we leverage technology, digital platforms to get those types of signatories and sign-offs for those kinds of complaints, right? So when we hear getting 2/3 of your constituency or your government or whatever to sign, it sounds like an arduous task, but maybe there's an opportunity there with technology, I don't know, where you can actually get these signatures and maybe make some real change. But it's great that you've even brought that up, because it's great to know that that even exists, right? But then how do we make sure that we're able to utilize, that law? So thank you for that.
The challenge is really just, it's valid. And the challenge really is just a mix of rural and urban. So technology will work, as Kadaria was saying, for an urban population, where you can get them to sign up a petition,
right,
change.org, put it on a website. But for a rural population, you're right, actually, maybe looking at something like SMS, USSD, and that's a bit more engaging. But then you would need to have database of numbers of voters. You need to do some door-to-door, as Kadaria said. So it's a lot more involved, because you need to explain to people why they need to sign this petition, what is bad, what does it mean? So it's a lot of work. But you're right. I think someone who is determined to do it with the money and time, and as you said, leveraging technology, we could actually get some results.
And get it done, absolutely. All right, I have another quick question here. Please, somebody give me a check on time from our team. We have 3 more questions and then we'll call it a day on the Q&A. Chika says, since our elected representatives, both in the state and federal level, are dragging their feet on the financial autonomy of the local government, how can we, the citizens, upturn that decision so as to help encourage development in our communities? Does any of our panelists want to take that question?
Yes.
Okay.
This is why I made the suggestion of holding them accountable from now, because look at how long it took us to get the Freedom of Information Act. The turkeys will not vote for Christmas, neither will the rams vote for Salah. The state government is the direct beneficiary of the current status quo. And this should not be. The Constitution already says there are 3 tiers of government and each one should be autonomous. So it shouldn't require any additional act of the National Assembly in order for the local government to get its autonomy. However, whenever it's in favor of the citizen, suddenly there's more red tape and more layers added when it's not necessary. I'll take us back to the Child's Rights Act and various international treaties that we as a nation have ratified, and then suddenly the states say, well, it doesn't apply in my state until I also ratify it. So as things stand, constitutionally, we have 3 arms of government. They're supposed to be separate and independent. And we, the citizens, by asking our local government, how much did you get in this year's? I'm just putting it as simply as that. How much did you get? I got 100,000 naira, but I know that, you know, the allocation was supposed to be 1 million. So what happened to the other 900,000? Well, the state government withheld it. State government, what did you withhold my 900,000 for? And what have you done with it? It really is that simple. So when we begin to put that sort of pressure, there'll be disincentive to the state government to keep the local government funds, and they will release it. It's really that simple. But it needs us to come to the table, and come to the table in force, in mass. When I say in force, I don't mean, you know, gloves and fisticuffs, but yeah.
Can I say a little something, please? I think the impact of poverty in sort of determining how we engage with governance is sometimes not fully understood by many people. So poverty has been weaponized in places of relative affluence. It's not sort of quite clear that this is going on. But if you spend time in places like the North, for example, that have really high poverty rates, and understand that there are people sort of barely eking out a living, not being able to eat, patronage has become a legitimate way, if you like, to earn a living. And where you have patronage, essentially you can't have accountability. And so for me, I've always said that, look, nation building is intentional, but it is also not something that happens overnight. And I think often the reason why Nigerians keep getting disappointed is that election circle after election circle, we keep waiting for some sort of magic word. We keep hoping. So we go through this cycle of hope and despair because, you know, elections come and we think, if we get this new leader now, suddenly something is going to change. And nothing is going to change because fundamentally, you've not altered the process through which you elect leaders in a way that enables the best among us to go to the top. That can only happen fundamentally if you sort of educate your people. So I think we need to do a whole lot more around civic education, which is why what you're doing is great. Because I think it starts with an informed electorate. It starts with informed citizens who understand that there's a direct correlation between that man who gave them 1,000 and the fact that they don't have running water at home, or that their children cannot afford malaria medicine. I think it's that gap that is missing among the majority of our people. Now, that's not to say that I don't understand the significance of what the elites can do, because they lead. Part of the problem we've also had is that the elite consensus in this country has been largely driven by politicians, and they've been consenting around the things that work for them, right? So we have an elite consensus that agrees, basically, we should do patronage politics. At our at the party level, we should allow a handful of people determine. At the national level, money should play a role in the way we elect people. When we go into government, as long as we are kind of doing okay, we can pay lip service to people. But in reality, if you look at each and every single one of them, there's a way in which they benefit personally from being in government. So, and I think this is really where people like Sworte, people listening here, people like Dele, Yemi, and sort of the work they're doing, this is where it matters really, because it's about saying, even though to a certain extent, we are people of privilege, and we have to admit we are choosing to begin to use our privilege to advocate for a different consensus. And that consensus is about building a country that works. So every little thing helps, but ultimately, I think people need to sort of begin to manage their expectations, because there are many. I hear them when they say these are very significant elections. I hear them, but we've had elections that everybody thought were the most significant that were going to be. We are in very bad times here now because I think we're facing much more problems, and there are many of them existential in nature. But you know, it's not going to be one election that is going to solve Nigeria's problems. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It's community work, it's elections, yes. People should get their voter cards and go out. It's the beginning of a process. And what is encouraging for me about this process and these elections is that more than any time in our history, people are becoming aware of the power that they have, particularly young people, and they're getting engaged. So I'm hoping the level of apathy that we've seen in the past when it comes to the poll will be reduced. Lagos regularly elects a president with 1 million votes when it could be 5 million people voting. This year, they have 7 million voters. Can we get at least 3-4 million out? These are some of the things that for me, you know, will change things if they happen.
Thank you, Kadaria. Thank you very much. Just going to take 2 more of the 3 questions that I mentioned, and then we'll close out the Q&A. Sylvia Adebajo says, thanks to the organizers for putting this together. This is a very important topic or webinar today. I have 2 questions. There is the general belief that new breed parties without structure can't achieve very much. Is this really true? How can we join a political party of our choice? Do any of our panelists, I think everyone here is, but I'll ask Boma Alabi to please answer that.
Sure. Joining political parties, well, I joined from the local government, so that's my personal experience. I presume that's also the case. I mean, when I say ward level, when I say local government, but ward level, they also want, I don't know why that is, they wanted to know your place of origin and those sorts of things. That needs to change, but that's that. And then talking about whether we can succeed without structures for new parties, I think we have no idea of the power we have. And I'll share these 2 incidents, or shall I say 2 stories, which are absolutely true. If you make an attempt, you'll be shocked at how you succeed. So I had a lot of complaints from various quarters about PVCs and the difficulties of collecting PVCs. I also spent 5 hours at a collection station myself before I got mine. And I went around to see what was going on. And it really was dreadful, seeing so many people just milling about in the hot sun, simply to exercise their civic duty and their constitutional right. So I engaged with the president of the Bar Association, Nigerian Bar Association, on Friday. I said, this is just not right, that they're stopping collection by Sunday. It's an INEC administrative decision. It's not in the Electoral Act. If they chose to, they could give us PVCs up until election day. And with the numbers, certainly that I have personally seen in Lagos, I just think it's unfair that they're disenfranchising so many citizens. The president of the bar says, well, can you write down your personal experience and I will engage with INEC? I did so, took the time to set out all that had happened, shared videos of what was going on in Lagos in various collection centers. He made those phone calls. INEC had a meeting on Saturday. That was largely the deciding factor to giving us an additional week to the 5th of February. So it takes take that step and make that intervention. You'll be surprised at the result. This Freedom of Information Act we're talking about, President Jonathan signed it on the night before his administration elapsed, because previously that's what happened and stopped it from coming through for all of those years. And that's why it took 13 years. We all picked up the phones a few days before and started calling everybody we knew within government who had any influence on the president to ensure that that was signed before he left and before the time lapsed. And guess what? It happened. So to go to Kadaria's point, yes, majority of our people are not lettered, majority of them are poor, but in every local government, we have at least one educated person, or two, or three, and it only takes one. I have a friend who, she doesn't even live in her local government area, but she makes it a point to get to know who they are, and she's been doing this since the, I think, after Obasanjo, when she realized that nothing was happening in her local government. So whoever is running, she will extract a promise from you. You will do this, you will do that, you will do that in your term. Otherwise, I will mobilize and fight you. And they know that she can because she has the wherewithal to do that. And as a result of that one person's intervention, there are results of good, what the dividends of democracy in that local government, because they deliver on the promises they make to her, because they know her ability to disrupt things if not. So we in this webinar are a force of nature if we choose to impact on our different smaller communities. And this is how it has a ripple effect. Our little pebbles will suddenly have that ripple effect and become an avalanche. We don't need every single person in the local government to get involved because many of them are not equipped. But a few of us who are can certainly make that difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Boma Alabi, SAN, for that. All right, so I'm going to wrap up.
One
Yes.
final thing before we go. I noticed there are people whose hands have been up. I don't know if you've noticed.
Oh, yes, we're engaging them individually.
I also wanted to quickly touch on one thing that's going to be sort of very significant to this pause that we haven't discussed, and that's that of security. Because like I've pointed out, we've seen a huge increase in the number of people who are registering to vote, which is a really great thing because it means people are beginning to make the connection between their lives and politics and governance. The issue is, will they come out to vote? Will they feel secure? Will they feel that if they come out to vote, they're safe? And so there's also a role that we can play. Forget, people talk about the police and everything, but, doctors started saying at the beginning of this, when you go out and vote, that staying to actually wait until your vote is counted and sent off, at least this time electronically, might also provide collective security for everybody else who's there. Because, that lack of sort of a number of people where, there's not enough of you is when people can actually come and scare people away. It's easier to take on a handful of people than it is to take on a whole community. And so we should encourage people to also see themselves as providing security for each other during this pause. Thank you.
Thank you. A very, very important point there from Kadaria as well. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just want to quickly mention that the replay of this webinar will be available on our Facebook page. If you just go to Facebook and search for Sworte Talks, SWORT Talks, you'll be able to find it and you can rewatch this. You can share the link with family and friends. Let's all get educated and informed so we can be inspired to take action. Just to round off our conversation, 30 seconds from all of our different speakers on this final question from Fumi, which says, I believe citizens' apathy or indifference is serious. How do we ginger awareness and interest? How do we fight voters' apathy? So let's use that to wrap up, and we can kick off with Boma Alabi.
How do we wrap up? Sorry, how do we fight voter apathy? This is part of what we're doing here. When we realize how important it is to participate, then we will get involved. We need to be talking to our networks, your parents, your friends, your younger friends, your cousins, whoever you can reach. You need to be doing that one-on-one education and explaining to people just how important each and every person is and how every vote counts in your workspace. So for instance, in my workspace, I was, of course, it was tongue-in-cheek, but it got the right responses. I'm like, you are not getting paid if you don't show me your PVC. That was not something you could do legally, and I wasn't going to do that, but it conveyed how seriously I took your engaging and participating and performing your civic duty. And it became a joke that you'd come into my office and you show me your PVC, say, look, I'm ready to vote. I don't care who you're voting for, but it's a civic duty and you ought to perform it. You ensure that those who work around you and you have influence over their time are given the time to go and register and go and pick up those sorts of things from an individual perspective. Of course, as one of the panelists said, if you have access to the resources and the logistics to run town hall meetings, that's a good way to get people in there and get them involved. If you're one of those who goes clubbing, and that's where a lot of our young people are out there, speak, get a microphone and speak. If you have access to DJs who are influencers amongst the young people, then engage them. And when you have persuaded an influencer, they will influence a lot of people. So it's, simple steps like that. It's not something that will happen overnight, but simple steps like that will get others on board and less apathetic, and more of us will be engaged. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Kadaria, what would you like to add to that? How do we fight voters' apathy?
I just want to reemphasize the fact that we've always had people registering to vote. The problem is, yes, apathy, bringing them out to vote. To example, the presidential elections in Lagos in 2019, there were over 5 million registered voters, only 1.1 million came out to vote. The difference between the person who won and the person that lost was 130,000 votes. It's appalling when you think about it, that 130,000 people are in Lagos State determine who sort of is going to pretend over the affairs of this country. So we must keep talking to people through this kind of forums, through radio, through TV, anywhere you can reach people, and making them understand that they tell you that votes don't really count. If they didn't count, they wouldn't be so eager to keep you at home. So it's really important that people understand that they do have power and they should come out. And then we should do our best, as I said, to also ensure that the environment is right. So people are not scared to come out and vote. When they come out to vote, they know that their vote will count. I think the new Electoral Act has sort of given some of us a little bit of comfort, because there have been improvements that should, sanitize the process and make it a little bit more credible. But I also don't believe that this is something that will happen overnight. It's work that you keep doing through time.
Thank you so much. And finally, because Dele Faritimi had to go, Yemi, what would you like to add to that in terms of how to fight voter apathy?
Is that better? Okay.
Yemi, are you there? It's breaking up.
All right. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, go ahead.
All right. I think really just to realize that it's a lot of work, to be honest, and there's no silver bullet. Voter apathy is a reflection of what has been damaged over many years. People not having trust in the system, people feeling shortchanged by political leaders, electoral processes that have been less than credible. So to build it back, we just need to realize that it takes time. It takes time for the educated, first of all, to decide they want to act in their own enlightened self-interest. It takes time for them to invest the resources and time into educating people in their network. As Ms. Alabi said, she used her network in the office and ensured they were engaged in the process. As she said, at least get your PVC. She can't enforce if they go out on election day because she won't be in their homes, but at least If they hear enough and they now decide to act on Saturday, on election day, it won't be, oh, I wish I had registered. You would already have your PVC and you can act. Then we all have, especially again, the power that the elite have. We all have a network of people we're connected to in one way or the other. Some people have drivers, some people have cooks, some people have other staff in different capacities, and you can leverage those contacts to educate them about why governance affects their quality of life. Aisha Yusufu says it all the time. When people call her from her village and need her to pay hospital bills or need her to pay school fees, she uses that opportunity to engage. Are you registered to vote? Who's running for senator? Who's running for governor? Because her point is, if they were doing their jobs, you wouldn't be calling me to pay school fees or pay for hospital bills because they'll be publicly available. So we just, I think, especially for this audience, the Nigeria's educated elite, we need to be clear that we have a lot of work to do, and it's not, it won't happen overnight. And lastly, I'll end with this quote, just also recognizing that one person can and does make a difference. So each person should find a place where they want to make a difference. And again,
Brilliant. Thank you so very much to all of our panelists today. This has been an amazing conversation. So much has been said. Because of time, I'm not going to recap too much like I normally would, but I will say www.shineyoureye.org. Get to know your local government chairman and all the different aspects of how the local government works, but start there. Get your PVC if you have not. It is your right to vote, but it's also your civic duty. You have a responsibility to your children's children to make sure that you go out and vote, because everything that happens in this election will impact the future generations. Also, call your local government chairman. The numbers on that page that we just talked about, pick up the phone, don't be afraid, call. If you don't want to call, write a letter, come together with a bunch of friends, form some kind of group and write a letter, demand answers, and remember that they have 30 days to respond. If they don't respond, you can take legal action. Organize a town hall meeting if you can, especially in the more rural areas like Kadaria was pointing out, where, you know, they don't have access to technology like we all do here. So we have to be creative in the ways that we reach them and preach that message of how, you know, voting impacts their future and their lives on a daily basis, as in the process and what comes out of it impacts their lives. So thank you so much to all of our speakers. Remember that the replay will be available on Facebook. Sworte Talks is what you need to look out for on Facebook, and you can rewatch this. Boma Alabi, OONSAN, thank you so very much for taking time to be with us today. Kadaria Ahmed, journalist extraordinaire, thank you for being here. And Yemi Adamoleku, one of our very own, very, very active citizen, doing some really amazing work, incredible work, has been at it. I don't know how Yemi does it, to be honest, because she puts so much on the line to get this work done. So thank you very much. And to Dele Farutimi, who had to go as well, thank you for joining us. And I'm just gonna call on Mrs. Amber, one of our team members as well, to do the vote of thanks. But just before she comes up, if the team can just pop up Yemi's book on the screen. Yemi Adamoleku wrote a book, and it's a book that we should all get because it really ties into everything that we've been talking about today. So can we put the picture up on the screen? Yemi wrote a book, and you know what? I'm just going to bring Yemi back on. Yemi, you're good at this. 30 seconds. Tell us what the book is about so that we can go get it. She's still here?
I think
okay,
we
Yemi,
may have.
Yeah, Yemi had to run actually. So if we could just put the picture up, Yemi has a book, and we'll put all that information on all our different Sworte Talks platforms as well. But Mrs. Amber, over to you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I certainly have learned a lot, and I would like to personally thank all our speakers, just like our moderator did. To Mrs. Alabi, thank you so much for letting us know that we hold so much power. And thank you for letting us know that even somebody in your setting was able to go and contribute in the extension of our PVCs being issued. And to Ms. Ahmed, thank you so much. Thank you. I know the young people on board have learned so much, and it's painting a bigger picture and a better picture of the Nigeria that we all dream about. And to Yemi Adamoleku, thank you so much for your contribution. And to Dele Farutimi, thank you so much for giving us that insightful legal representation of what it means to be a voter. I want to end by saying that let us remember that politicians are elected by good citizens who do not vote. And on behalf of Sworte Talks, we are just doing our civic duty. We're not connected to any parties, but we as citizens want to ensure that we bring about a knowledge base for every Nigerian so that we understand our power, we understand the symbolic relationship between government and the people, and we continue to understand that it is our civic rights, just like one of the speakers said, that we are entitled to vote. I mean, we have to vote. One thing I realized today was that I didn't realize that if I did not vote, I was actually breaking a law. So I actually learned that today. And to the Sworte Talks family, I want to thank all of you for putting all of this together. We meet at late hours of the night, just making sure that we can put this together, and we see this as one of our civic duties. And of course, to our founder, Dr. Obusoya, thank you so much for being the injection that gets us awake. Thank you so much for being able to inject our energies. You're probably the oldest member of the team, but you're the most energetic. So thank you for all you do for us. To all the schools that have attended, thank you so much. We want you to be that picture of a better Nigeria. So thank you for being part of this. And to our audience, this would not have been possible without you. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And thank you for making today so successful, because we certainly had over 100 participants, which is a lovely and great number. So to our wonderful Aderonke, thank you again for your eloquence. Thank you for asking pertinent questions that brought out points that many of us were not aware of. So have a wonderful evening. Over to you, Aderonke.
Thank you, Mrs. Amber, for that. And once again, as Mrs. Amber has said, thank you, everybody, for joining us. For those of you who have stayed this long, we really appreciate you for doing that. We know it's a Sunday night. Tomorrow's Monday. Everybody has to go to work or school. But thank you. We always love to get your feedback. So when you do watch the video on Facebook, please send us a message. Let us know. We're on all social media platforms. Just look for Sworte Talks. Send us a message and let us know what you've learned from today's session. We do this every quarter, so please stay tuned for our next session. This is a 22nd Sworte Talks edition. We've done 22 now editions of this, and we do a variety of topics. So look out for our next topic as well. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. And God bless all of us, and God bless Nigeria. Take care.